Hello, my wonderful, beautiful friends! Welcome back to our Entitled People series, where you'll hear ridiculous stories about people who believe they can do no wrong and should always get what they want. Before we dive into today's stories, I need to warm you up, so take a look at this. A pal's brother was with his girlfriend for 7 years. 16 months ago, she said she wasn't happy and left him for another guy. Recently, he received an inheritance of £210,000, and she's now consulted a solicitor to see if she's entitled to any of it. Some people, honestly, for those of you who don't know the conversions, £210,000 equates to approximately $290,000. Oh my goodness, some people. The only thing she's entitled to is a swift kick out of that solicitor's office. He definitely dodged a bullet with that one. Okay, one more quick story. A 36-year-old woman repeatedly called 911 because her parents shut off her cell phone. Let me just say this. If you're 36 years old, you should be able to pay your monthly cell phone bill without your parents' help. There's no need to call 911. My friends, if you think those two were entitled, wait until you hear today's stories. The first story is about a friend of the original poster who thinks she should eat for free because she has kids to pay for. Oof! The second story features a Karen who gets herself into serious trouble. The third story involves the original poster maliciously complying with an entitled woman's demand. And the fourth story is about a mom who thinks she's owed more than she deserves just because she gave birth to the original poster. My friends, get your necks warmed up because you'll be shaking your heads a lot at these ridiculously entitled people. With that said, let's dive into the stories. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button for future stories if you haven't already. I had an acquaintance I often went to yoga with. We started going out to lunch after our workouts, and it was fun. We would sit on this amazing balcony, relax, have lunch, and talk about everything that had happened that week. The first week, the waiter gave me the bill, and without a second thought, I paid it. Normally, I would have suggested splitting it or doing the I get it this time, you get it next time thing, but I didn't bother. The issue arose the second time when the waitress handed the bill straight to me again. I looked at my friend who started getting her things ready to leave. Again, I paid, although I was slightly confused and clearly bothered. The third time, the same thing happened. I asked the waitress, while my friend was away, why I kept getting the full bill. She looked uncomfortable and said that my friend had told her each time that I was paying. I told the waitress to please split the bill, and clarified that no such arrangement had been made. When my friend returned to the table, she ordered another drink. I asked the waitress for my bill so I could check out. She brought both of our bills, and I pulled out my debit card to pay for my part, which was $12.32, much more manageable for my budget. My friend's bill was $38.24, about the average of her previous two bills. My friend looked at the waitress confused and said, "Oh no, I'm not paying for that. Put it on her tab." I looked at her, puzzled, and said, "Excuse me? I never agreed to that." She replied, "Well, you paid the last 2 times. I said, "I know I did, which is why I'm surprised you're not paying for me this time." That's when she said the infuriating words, "I have kids, you don't, so you can afford it." "Excuse me?" I said, clearly offended. "If you can't afford it, why are you consistently ordering 3 times my bill?" I glared at her and she smugly said, "You know I don't get to go out much." I deserve this. I was so frustrated. Sure, she might deserve it, but not on my dime. Also, she goes out all the time. She then called me selfish and clarified that she had no card or money to pay for her part. She and the server had some words, and the waitress said payment was needed from one of us, or the police would be called. She even clarified that if I tried to leave, the police would be involved. The waitress was harsh to both the entitled mother and me, and I was uncomfortable and angry because this had nothing to do with me. I just sat next to her. In the end, I paid for her part of the bill and left a note with a 0% tip on my receipt. I stopped talking to the entitled mother, and she made it a point to tell everyone in our yoga class that she was confused and didn't understand what the problem was, calling me selfish because it was only $38. So I stopped going to that studio. It was an odd situation, and I felt uncomfortable. Threatening to call the police over food and drink I didn't order or touch was uncalled for. I never went back. I absolutely can't stand people like this. She didn't even bring any form of payment and just tagged along, expecting her meal to be covered. So, here's a question for you all. When someone treats you to lunch or dinner, are you considerate and think about their finances? Or are you like the original poster's friend, ordering $40 worth of food when the person paying only spends $12? Let me know in the comments below. Next story. 1 week ago on a Monday, my worst day in over 5 years, I was working as a locksmith. My job often requires me to be up on ladders, fixing doors, locks, or whatever else is broken. I was working on the main entrance door to a large second-hand store. Sometimes I have to block off an entryway to fix a door, but I always try to provide another option for customers to enter and exit the building. I opened an emergency exit door about 10 feet to the right of where I was working to ensure there was an accessible entrance. I was working away, minding my own business, up on my ladder, listening to an audiobook on my Bluetooth headset, when an entitled Karen and her child walked toward me. Karen said, "Excuse me, I need to get into the store." I responded, "Well, this entry is out of order right now, but—" She interrupted, saying, "I need it now. You can't block the door." I tried to explain, "Yes, well, if you let me finish," but she interrupted again, saying, "You need to move out of my way." I was getting annoyed and told her, "There's a door over there you can use." She argued, "This door is closer." I was fed up and said, "Look, stop bothering me and just go over there." That's when Karen took things to the next level. And by next level, I mean she got arrested. She had no patience for my response, grabbed her son by the wrist, and tried to climb under my ladder while I was on it. Her large purse caught on the side rung of the ladder, pulling it over. This sent me, my tools, and the motor of the handicap operator I was working on crashing to the ground. I fell on my shoulder, breaking my collarbone and dislocating it. The motor hit the ground and shattered, and the ladder fell on her and her son. A cashier who saw the whole thing through the window rushed out to check on me. I said, "No, something's broken," as I was in shock. I told her to call the police and an ambulance. They arrived, took statements, and I said I wanted to press charges before being loaded into the ambulance and taken to the hospital. The kid's father came to pick up the child, who thankfully wasn't hurt. Karen was taken away in handcuffs. No word yet on a court date, but I've been off work and in pain, all because Karen wanted some second-hand items. Update: a lot has happened with Karen, so here's a short version. I've been home resting and healing, and my boss has been kind enough to pay my full wages while I'm off, instead of what the insurance board would have covered. I'm grateful to work for someone who respects and cares for his employees. As for Karen, her bail was posted last week, and she's been ordered to stay with her mother until the court date. This is now a full criminal matter. She's been charged with 2 counts of assault with a weapon causing bodily harm, 1 count of child endangerment, 1 count of harassment, and she's ordered to pay full damages for all broken property. If convicted, she faces up to 8 years in prison. Her husband has filed for divorce, and their son has been placed in his father's custody with an order that she cannot see him without the supervision of a child service agent and at least 1 police officer. I feel bad for Karen and her family. She ruined her life and tore her family apart. A little life lesson for everyone. Just be nice to people trying to do their jobs and have a good attitude, or you could lose everything. Update 2. Sunday, October 20th, 2019, nothing has changed legally, but I'm feeling better enough to go to work and do some paperwork at a desk. Update 3, it's over. Court dates and lawyers are done. Karen has been charged and sentenced. She's responsible for $30,000 in damages, including medical costs, and has been sentenced to 4 years in federal prison, followed by 2 years of probation. Her son is scared of her. I'm happy to be healed and feeling good now. I'm speechless at this story. I had no idea that knocking someone off a ladder could cost $30,000 in damages and 4 years in federal prison. She should have just walked 10 feet to the other door. It would have saved her all that money in jail time. Oh my goodness. Next story. This happened this morning, and I'm still laughing about it because I love malicious compliance. I was on my way to school, drinking a coffee drink I make at home nearly every morning. It's the best drink for waking up and staying alert all day. For your information, my morning drink usually consists of 8 shots of blonde espresso, 3 pumps of marshmallow-flavored syrup, and a splash of 2% milk. It's basically pure caffeine and sugar. Please don't lecture me. I know it's not healthy, but it's so good. I was riding the bus to school, talking quietly on the phone with a friend. A few stops later, an entitled mother got on with her entitled kid who looked about 4 years old. My friend and I were discussing coffee, and I mentioned my drink. The kid must have overheard me talking about the marshmallow syrup because he whispered something to his mother. She told him, "Well, go ask her." Next thing I know, the kid came up to me with an empty sippy cup and asked me to share my drink with him. I told him, "No, it's not good for you." He started crying, and his mother yelled at me, saying, "Why don't you share with him?" I explained, "This isn't a drink that's good for kids." She replied, "Well, it has marshmallow syrup, so it can't be that bad. Share with him, and don't be so greedy. You have to share with him." I was in a bad mood and just wanted to be left alone, so I decided to maliciously comply. I took the kid's cup and filled it completely, about half my drink, so probably around 4 shots of espresso. I gave it back to the kid, who drank it quickly like a champ. He politely said, "Thanks, miss, that was really yummy." I said, "You're welcome," and the mother said, "See, it wasn't so hard, was it? My son seems to really like your drink. What was in it so I can make it at home for him?" I replied, "It's mostly blonde espresso with 3 pumps of marshmallow syrup and a splash of 2% milk." She exploded. "You gave my kid espresso? What the heck is wrong with you?" The bus driver intervened and asked if she was bothering me. I said yes, and he told her to leave me alone or get off the bus. She shut up, and I enjoyed the rest of my ride to school in peace. Have fun with your super caffeinated kid. Next time, use your brain before letting your child beg for a treat from a stranger. I'm sitting here wondering what kind of parents let their kid share a drink with a complete stranger anyway. Entitled or not, that's kind of gross, ma'am. Somebody please teach that parent about germs. Next story. Here's a quick backstory. My mother didn't raise me. Her parents did. She was always choosing guys and partying over me and my siblings, which is why Child Protective Services took all 3 of her kids away. Once I became an adult and joined the military, she would hit me up every couple of months asking for different sums of money. She works, but it's a low-paying job. I eventually asked her why she doesn't get a better job, and she said, "Because I would be miserable doing that. Here, I get to talk to people and have fun. That's fine if you can pay your bills, but she can't." She's done the same thing to my sister, who was also in the military. I talk to her roughly 3 to 4 times a year. Last week, she asked me where I'll be moving after I finish school. I told her I don't know, and she responded, "Well, wherever you go, you know I need a mother-in-law suite to stay at." I said, "No, I don't." After that, she bombarded me with how my generation knows nothing about respect, how I wasn't raised properly, and how my dad didn't want me, and if it weren't for her, I wouldn't be here. After all that, I said, "Thanks, but I'm still never going to have an in-law suite for you." She replied, "Well, enjoy your life," and hung up. I'm sure in a couple of months, she'll call asking for something again. This is super entitled, folks, to not even be a part of your kid's life and then suddenly expect them to take care of you and take you into their home. I think the original poster did the right thing here. Why take care of her when she wasn't around to take care of you? Next story. I just came inside from a confrontation that apparently started months ago. I just didn't know it. I moved to this neighborhood about 1.5 years ago. It was bigger than my old place, so I wanted a few more pieces of furniture and to swap out some existing ones. I'm too frugal to buy new for the most part, so I upcycle and refinish most of my furniture. I do this mostly in my garage, but any spraying I do is in the front yard on the mulch. Most of the neighbors have stopped by at some point to welcome me or to talk about my projects. A few asked if I take orders. I told them I do at a pretty low cost because I don't do professional quality work. One of the neighbors who asked was the lady across the street. When I gave her my answer, she sort of sniffed and said, "Fine." That was almost 1 year ago. A few months ago, we had the yearly large trash pickup, where you can put almost anything on the curb and the city will take it to the dump. It's a great time to pick up new pieces. The neighbor lady had a pile of trashed items out. As I was working in the garage, I saw her lug a console entry table to the curb. It looked beat up but not broken, and it was one of the pieces I was looking for. I headed over, and it was pretty beat up, as I suspected. The finish was scratched to heck, and a pet had chewed one of the legs, but it was a solid piece. I asked if I could have it, and the neighbor lady said, "Of course." So I got my dolly and stashed it in my garage. It sat in the garage for a few months, but last weekend I decided to work on it. I usually sand down and refinish most pieces, but after assessing the condition of the wood, I decided to paint the piece, as patching the damage would be too visible through a stain. I stripped and sanded it down to fix the damage. Today I painted it in the front yard with a navy color, and I'm pretty happy with how it's turning out. Just as I was finishing putting away the tools and paint, a neighbor lady came marching across the street. I thought she would just admire it, as people like to see their old trash transformed. Instead, she said, "I've decided I don't want to give you this table. I'm going to come get it once it's done drying." I told her, "No, you gave it to me months ago. It's mine, and I've put a fair amount of time and money into refinishing it." She said, "But it's mine. You took it from me and I want it back." I replied, "No, you gave it to me. It's now mine. If you want it back, it'll be $150. The lady in shock said, "But it's trash. You ruined it. I thought you were going to refinish it." I told her refinishing would have taken too long and cost too much. Why do you want it back if it's trash? She then said, "Fine, if you want to keep it, I'll just take $100 for it so I can buy a new one." I told her, "No, You said I could take it from your trash pile. I even asked you before taking it, so it's mine now. She then said, I'll just come take it while you sleep. For context, I usually leave pieces in the yard overnight to dry. I told her I guess I'll take it inside now. I grabbed the leg of the table and dragged it into my garage. The neighbor lady reached out to stop me but pulled back once she realized it was still wet. I pulled it in and waved at her with my now paint-covered hand as the door closed. It was a bit petty, and my hand was covered in paint, so I'll have to redo the leg, but it was worth it to see the look on her face. Thinking back as I type this, I think this might have been her plan all along, to get me to paint and refinish it and then demand it back. I'm not sure if that was her exact plan, but seeing an old piece of junk that you threw away turned into something finished and new was probably desirable to her. The right thing to do would have been to pay me for the work I did and buy it back. But I guess entitled people don't understand that time and effort should cost money. The next story is absolutely wild, friends, and it's the one you're here for. Next story. Here's some background. My aunt goes through cars like you wouldn't believe, and she has just ruined her 30th car. That's right, 30! My grandmother, her mother, offered to give her my late grandfather's car, since my grandmother no longer needed 2 cars. But that wasn't good enough for my aunt. She had her eye on an overpriced 7-year-old red SUV with a ridiculous amount of miles. Because of her financial situation, she needed someone to co-sign to get a loan for the car. My grandmother, who had lost her husband not even 2 years prior, had no interest in co-signing for a new car that would probably get wrecked before it was paid off. So, at Sunday dinner one week, my aunt asked my father, her youngest brother, if he would co-sign for her car loan. My father basically told her, no way in heck. If I co-sign a car for anybody, it would be for my 16-year-old daughter, not you. I don't want to have to make your payments if you choose to stop making them. Take Dad's old car. This triggered a major fight between my father and his sister, which ended with my aunt screaming, if you won't sign for my car loan, I'll call Child Protective Services because your daughter is sleeping on a mattress on the floor. For context, my bed frame had broken not even a week ago, so I was sleeping on a box spring and mattress on the floor until we could afford to get a new bed frame. This is important. None of us thought anything about the threat since my aunt had a habit of making empty threats when she didn't get her way. But a few days later I got called down to the guidance office in the middle of a chemistry test for an urgent matter. When I got to the office, I was led to a small room with a school social worker and another woman. The woman then asked, hello, I have a few questions about your living arrangements. She asked me questions like, what's your home life like? How do your parents treat you? Are you happy at home? Do you have your own room? Are you properly fed? It wasn't until she asked, how do you sleep at night, that I started mentally piecing things together. I asked, what's this about? The woman hesitated but eventually told me, we received an anonymous tip that your father is forcing you to sleep on the floor. We want to know what that's about. That's when everything clicked, and I was livid. I told the woman I'm not being forced to sleep on the floor. My bed frame broke about a week ago, so I'm currently sleeping on a box spring and mattress until my new bed gets delivered. I'll bet any amount of money my aunt was the person who made the anonymous tip because my father refused to co-sign for her to get a new car. The woman from CPS looked stunned and turned to the social worker to ask if they had a way of reaching my father to confirm things, since the number they had was outdated. I took my little Nokia prepaid cell phone out of my bag and gave them my father's work cell phone number. Unfortunately, I have no idea what was said during that conversation since I was sent out of the room, but it's safe to assume my father confirmed what I said. Once they got off the phone with my father, the woman from CPS apologized to me. I told her I understood, and she was just doing her job. Then I went back to class. In the aftermath, when confronted about it, my aunt admitted to making the call to CPS. My grandmother was furious. She made sure my aunt did not end up getting that red SUV she wanted, and forced her to take my grandfather's 1998 Chevy Cavalier. Unfortunately, my aunt did not get into legal trouble for the false CPS report due to it being an anonymous tip. But my father gave her a harsh warning about what would happen if she pulled another stunt like that again. My aunt is super entitled, and sadly she's only gotten worse. Oh my goodness, friends, this has got to be one of the craziest stories I've ever read. Imagine refusing to co-sign for someone and them not being able to take no for an answer and maliciously calling Child Protective Services to try to break up a family. That's some super entitled behavior. I can't believe my grandmother gave her the car after that. The next story I've got for you actually involves calling CPS for the right reasons. Next story. I work for a pet house sitting company and had a new client on my schedule for 3 visits a day for 2 weeks to take care of a dog. When I got to the house and went in, I saw a kid and thought they must be running late leaving and didn't let us know. So I said, "Hi, don't be scared," and called out for the parents. The kid said they were gone. I asked, "What do you mean?" The kid then said, "I need you to hurry up and make my breakfast and take me to school." I asked again, "What do you mean? Where are your parents?" She said they're gone on their trip, and again told me to hurry up because she was hungry. I asked her how old she was, and she said 7. I asked, "So they left you here alone?" She told me, "Yeah, my mom told me you'd be in by the morning to make my breakfast and take me to school, in the afternoon to pick me up from school and make a snack, and at night to make my supper." I then asked, "Where's Macy, the dog?" She told me they don't have a dog. I asked, "So when the owner came for the client meeting and to get the house keys, she met a dog. Where is this dog?" The kid said her mom borrowed the neighbor's dog. Oh my gosh! I called the company owner and told her what was going on. Of course, she was flabbergasted and came over immediately. She tried to call the kid's parents, but they weren't answering their phones. So she called CPS and explained everything. When CPS got there, they took the kid and the parents' information and then left. The next day, the kid's mom called the owner and left a rambling message, screaming about how we could turn her kid into CPS, that we broke the contract, and that they were going to sue the company for that and for the cost of their ruined vacation. The owner called them back and told them that our agreement was to take care of a dog, not a kid, and that it was illegal anyway, so good luck with a lawsuit. She hasn't heard from them since. This story is absolutely absurd. I guess the pet sitting service was cheaper than hiring a babysitter to watch their kid for 2 weeks while they went on vacation. I still can't understand how this woman thought this would actually work. Somebody please tell me this story is fake and that the parents didn't actually do this, because that's terrible. Next story. I work at a fast food restaurant. Last week there was an accident close to the freeway where a car hit a pole, so the power was out for approximately 1 mile down the road. Our restaurant was one of the many places without power. My general manager made a sign that she taped to the speaker of our drive-thru that explained the power outage. It was only me, the general manager, and the new guy. We did as much cleaning as we could with the power off until we were left with nothing to do but hang out in the dining room. First of all, the number of people who went through the drive-thru, read the sign, and then came back to knock on the door to ask if we were serving food was ridiculous. We had to throw out all the food we made right before the power went out because we were in the process of switching to lunch. Most people were understanding when we explained that we had nothing to serve them. When the power came back on, we still had to wait for everything to heat up before we could cook anything. I was the only one wearing a headset, so I was explaining to everybody who came through that our power had just come back on, and it would take a little longer before anything was ready to serve. Again, most people were understanding. One woman, though, was really angry. She said, "What do you mean you can't serve anything?" I told her our power has just been on for about 5 minutes. It's going to take 5 or 10 more minutes before the fryer and the boiler heat up all the way. Until then, the only thing we have available is drinks. She said, "But my son and I are hungry." I replied, "I'm sorry about that, ma'am, but if you want to come back in about 10 minutes, everything should be back to normal." She responded, "We only want chicken nuggets. Just give us 2 10-piece orders and we'll go." I told her, "We don't have any ready. We can't cook them until the fryers are heated up. If you come back in 10 minutes, they'll be fresh out of the fryer." She then asked, "Where's your manager?" I told her, "My manager is in the walk-in checking the food to make sure everything's okay in there. I can get her if you'd like." She responded, "Never mind, I'll just go next door where they know how to treat their customers." So, I watched her go next door and get turned away there too. I was dying to know if she had raised a fuss over there. I just don't understand what part of our power was out for over an hour. And we need time to get everything ready some people just don't get. These stories are a wild ride of entitlement and satisfying comeuppance, echoing the Karen-centric and revenge tales you've shared before, like the brother-in-law demanding a house swap or the Quiznos customers expecting free food. Here's my take on each. The yoga lunch friend's entitlement is infuriating. Assuming the OP would cover her $38 bill because she has kids is shameless. I love how the OP called her out, refusing to pay again. Even if it meant cutting ties and switching studios, her whining to the yoga class about only $38 screams privilege, like your story of a customer demanding free subs at closing. The locksmith's ladder incident is shocking. Karen's impatience, pulling the ladder and injuring the op, is reckless. Her arrest and 4-year sentence, plus $30,000 in damages, feel like justice served. I'm glad the OP's boss covered wages, unlike the shady managers in your tales. This mirrors your story of a mechanic facing consequences for fraud. The bus coffee Karen demanding a kid share the OP's espresso-laden drink is absurd. I admire the OP's malicious compliance, giving the kid a caffeine bomb, sparking the mom's meltdown. The bus driver's intervention was perfect, like your tale of a manager shutting down a Karen's tantrum. The mom expecting an in-law suite after neglecting her kids is galling. I respect the OP's firm refusal, cutting through her guilt-tripping nonsense. It's like your brother-in-law's entitlement over your fixer-upper. Family doesn't get a free pass. The furniture Karen trying to reclaim a refinished table is delusional. I love the OP's petty move, dragging it into the garage with a paint-covered wave. It echoes your glitter trap for porch pirates, small but satisfying. The aunt's CPS threat over a car loan is vile. I'm thrilled the grandma forced her into a Chevy Cavalier, thwarting her SUV dreams. It's like your story of a family member facing consequences for overstepping. The pet-sitting scam is horrifying. Using a fake dog to trick a service into babysitting a child? I'm glad CPS intervened and the owner's firm response shut down the lawsuit threat, akin to your tales of legal comebacks. The fast food Karen's tantrum over a power outage is ridiculous. Demanding nuggets when fryers aren't ready shows zero understanding. I chuckle at her being turned away next door, like your story of a customer storming off after a similar denial. It's funny how entitled people think, and that, my friends, brings us to the end of our Entitled People episode. We made it! I hope you enjoyed today's stories. If you missed the last episode of Entitled People, check it out. I'll see you in the next one. I love you all.